Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we cut through the noise, zero in on the key insights, and help you get genuinely well-informed.
Today, we're jumping into a story that's been making huge waves, particularly out of Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely unavoidable news. We're talking about the recent deployment of National Guard troops, even U.S. Marines right there in L.A.
And it's tied directly to a major lawsuit from the Department of Justice against the city itself.
All stemming from these escalating protests over immigration enforcement. Protests that really spiraled out of control into riots. It's been quite dramatic.
It really has. And what's so compelling, I think, is how this whole situation just throws into sharp relief this fundamental clash. It's federal immigration law versus California's long-standing sanctuary policies.
Right, specifically how that plays out in a huge city like Los Angeles. It's a real showdown. So our mission today for you is to really unpack this. We want to explore the arguments, why the federal government felt that it had to step in like this.
We'll look at the constitutional arguments, the claims about public safety consequences, and importantly, the significant financial costs that our source material points to.
Exactly. By the end of this deep dive, our goal is that you'll have a really clear, concise, but also insightful grasp of this whole issue. It's incredibly relevant, nationally highly debated.
And we want to give you the specifics, the key details, without, just overwhelming you with information overload. Help you feel truly informed.
Okay, let's get into it. So a key starting point, according to our sources, seems to be June 30th, 2025.
Ah, the DOJ lawsuit.
Yes. The Department of Justice filed suit against the city of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass, the city council, the whole leadership, basically.
And the central accusation. That they were actively blocking federal immigration enforcement because of their sanctuary policies.
Pretty direct charge. And the Attorney General, Pamela Bondi, she didn't mince words, did she?
No, not at all. Our sources quote her, saying quite clearly that sanctuary policies were the driving cause of the violence, chaos, and attacks on law enforcement that Americans recently witnessed in Los Angeles.
Driving cause. That's strong language.
Very. And she added that jurisdictions that flout federal law by prioritizing illegal aliens over American citizens, her words, are undermining law enforcement at every level.
So it wasn't just a legal fight in the courts. Things got, very real in the streets.
Extremely real. The deployment of troops, the Marines. That happened because, according to the sources, local police were effectively hamstrung by sanctuary policies. They couldn't contain the violent protests against federal immigration operations.
Hamstrung. And the cost of all that unrest, it's huge. Preliminary numbers from DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, put property damage at around $75 million.
$75 million. And that's just preliminary, plus dozens of injuries to police officers. It's a massive impact financially and, personally for those involved.
Definitely. And this escalation, this whole situation, it really brings us smack into the middle of a big constitutional debate, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This is a core part of the whole story. U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley, he's in the Central District of California, he really hammered the Supremacy Clause argument.
Okay, break that down for us. Supremacy Clause.
Right. So basically, it's the part of the Constitution that says, when federal law and state law clash, especially in an area like immigration where the federal government has historically had broad power, federal law wins out.
Federal law is supreme. Makes sense.
Yeah. And Asaley argued, quoting from our sources here, the United States Constitution's Supremacy Clause prohibits the city from picking and choosing which federal laws will be enforced.
So you can't just ignore federal immigration law if you're a city or state.
That's the argument. He said that by helping people our sources call removable aliens avoid federal law, the city's rules have contributed to a lawless and unsafe environment.
And there's legal history here, right? It's not just his opinion.
No, definitely not. The sources point straight to a big Supreme Court case, Arizona v. United States, back in 2012.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And the court affirmed pretty clearly that the government of the United States has broad, undivided power over the subject of immigration and the status of aliens.
Even though they struck down parts of Arizona's law, they still upheld that core federal power.
Exactly. They recognized federal primacy. So this isn't just like a minor disagreement. It's framed as a fundamental challenge to how the country's legal system is set up. Who gets the final say?
And we have expert legal commentary on this, too. Former federal judge J. Michael Luttig weighs in.
He does, and he states it very plainly. The Constitution vests the federal government with exclusive authority over immigration, full stop.
And if states try to block that?
He says when states or cities adopt these kinds of obstructionist policies, they undermine the constitutional order itself. Strong words.
Okay, so that's the constitutional argument from the federal side. But what about the tangible effects, the consequences on the ground, especially regarding public safety?
Right. Let's look at the LA policy itself. The city's sanctuary ordinance. It specifically forbids using city resources that includes police for immigration enforcement.
Okay, so a clear line drawn.
A very clear line. And then you look at the data from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Between 2020 and 2025, LA County apparently declined over 8,000 detainer requests.
8,000. Explain what a detainer request is, just quickly.
Sure. It's basically ICE asking a local jail or police department to hold someone for up to 48 hours beyond when they'd normally be released.
Why?
Because ICE believes that person is deportable, and they want time to take them into federal custody. Often these individuals have already been arrested or convicted for other crimes.
So LA County declined 8,000 of these requests for individuals the source is called criminal aliens.
Yes, and according to the ICE data cited, these weren't minor offenses. We're talking people charged with or convicted of things like homicide, sexual assault, serious drug trafficking.
That really brings the conflict into sharp focus. What are law enforcement voices saying about this?
Well, Tom Homan, who used to be the acting director of ICE, he raised serious concerns. He basically said, when local jurisdictions refuse to honor ICE detainers, they're releasing dangerous criminals back into communities instead of handing them over for deportation proceedings.
And he made another point, didn't he, about who the victims often are.
Yeah, a really critical point, he added. The victims of these crimes are disproportionately members of immigrant communities themselves. That's a perspective you don't always hear highlighted.
That definitely complicates the narrative that these policies are purely protective of immigrant communities.
It does.
Yeah.
And there's also a 2024 study mentioned from the Center for Immigration Studies. It found that places with sanctuary policies saw, on average, a 17% higher recidivism rate among people the study termed criminal aliens compared to places without those policies.
17% higher reoffending rate.
Okay.
Okay, so public safety is one major area of concern highlighted in the sources. What about the financial side? The cost to taxpayers?
Yeah, that's another big angle here. The Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, they put out an estimate. They say what they call illegal immigration costs California taxpayers about $21.8 billion a year.
Wow, $21.8 billion.
Yeah.
Annually, where does that money go?
It covers a lot of areas: education, healthcare, law enforcement costs, social services, things like that.
And has that number been stable?
Apparently not. The sources claim these costs have actually grown quite a bit under the Biden-Harris administration nationally and the Newsom administration in California.
And why do the sources say that is?
They attribute it to policies that, in their view, have incentivized what they term illegal immigration.
Can you give an example?
Sure, healthcare is a big one. Governor Newsom expanded Medi-Cal, California's health program, to cover all residents meeting the income requirements, regardless of immigration status, including those the sources term illegal immigrants, starting in 2024.
Regardless of age, too, right?
Right, regardless of age. And the estimated price tag for that specific expansion, about $2.6 billion extra per year for Medi-Cal.
So that's a very direct state policy choice with a significant budget impact tied to the state's immigration stance.
Exactly. It underlines that this isn't just abstract policy, it's a major financial commitment from California taxpayers.
What do researchers say about the sustainability of this?
Dr. Stephen Camarota, he's director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies, he argues California taxpayers are essentially subsidizing the state's defiance of federal law.
Subsidizing defiance. That's a provocative way to put it.
It is. And he adds that if you combine these direct costs with what he argues is the impact of depressed wages for lower-skilled workers, the overall burden becomes, in his word, unsustainable.
Unsustainable meaning what? Cuts elsewhere. Tax hikes.
That's the implication, yeah. That eventually something has to give. And on top of all that baseline cost, you have the recent riots we started with.
Right, the immediate costs of the unrest.
Exactly. Early estimates, just for deploying the National Guard and federal law enforcement, are over $30 million. And that's before you even get to property damage and lost business revenue, which could hit hundreds of millions.
So the financial picture painted here is pretty stark. How did California arrive at this point? this level of confrontation with federal policy.
Well, Governor Gavin Newsom has really leaned into this. He's positioned himself, quite deliberately it seems, as a major opponent of federal immigration enforcement efforts.
This isn't brand new, though, is it? California had sanctuary policies before him.
True. He built on existing foundations like the big one, SB 54 from 2017. That's the California Values Act.
Right, the Values Act, what did that do, essentially?
It fundamentally limited how much state and local police could cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Basically, it restricted them from using their resources, their personnel, for immigration enforcement tasks. Drew a clear line.
Separating local policing from federal immigration work.
Precisely. And Newsom, according to our sources, didn't just maintain that, he expanded on it. Signed more laws further restricting cooperation with ICE, put more state money into legal aid for people facing deportation.
So the sources frame this as a very conscious strategy.
Yes, they describe it as a deliberate strategy to obstruct federal immigration enforcement. It's portrayed not just as policy, but as a political stance, solidifying California as sort of a counterweight to federal approaches.
Has this strategy faced criticism within California?
Oh, definitely. Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, for instance, argues pretty strongly against it. Our sources quote him saying Newsom has consistently prioritized political posturing over public safety and the rule of law.
And he connects it to the recent events.
Directly. He says Newsom created the conditions for the chaos we're now witnessing.
Strong criticism.
Yeah.
What about the general public in California? Where do they stand?
Well, that's interesting. There was a Berkeley IGS poll back in May 2025. It found that a majority, 58% of California voters, actually believe state and local police should cooperate with federal immigration authorities, at least when dealing with individuals who've committed serious crimes.
58%. And how many supported the current sanctuary approach?
Only 32%. So there seems to be a disconnect between the state's official policy stance and maybe where a majority of voters are on this specific issue of cooperation regarding serious crimes.
Okay, so California pursues this path, described as calculated defiance.
Mm-hmm.
How did the federal government, particularly the Trump administration mentioned in the sources, push back? What was their response?
It was described as multi-pronged, not just one thing.
Like what?
Okay, first, increased ICE enforcement operations, specifically targeting sanctuary jurisdictions. Second, they looked at funding withholding certain federal law enforcement grants from places that weren't cooperating.
Hitting them in the wallet.
Seems like it. Third, sending more immigration judges to speed up removal cases. And fourth, allowing Border Patrol to operate further inland, deeper into the state, especially near sanctuary areas.
So a pretty comprehensive strategy to assert federal authority.
Yeah, designed to counter the state's obstruction, as they saw it. Former Attorney General William Barr put the federal obligation quite plainly.
What did he say?
He said, the Constitution doesn't give states the option to nullify federal immigration law, and when states do obstruct, the federal government has, quote, not just the right, but the obligation to take corrective action.
Obligation. Okay, so we have this deep conflict. Constitutional arguments, safety concerns, financial pressures, political strategies. It feels like a deadlock. Does the source material offer any way forward, any path towards resolution?
It does suggest a potential path, one based more on cooperation than confrontation. It lays out a few guiding principles.
Okay, what are they? Sounds constructive.
First principle, state and local officials need to acknowledge federal primacy. Basically, accept the constitutional reality that the federal government has the lead on immigration enforcement.
Step 1, recognize the established authority. What's next?
Step 2, focus enforcement on what the source calls criminal aliens. Prioritize those individuals who pose, genuine public safety threats. Make that the target.
So prioritize based on criminal history, not just immigration status alone. Makes sense. Third
is about community trust. The argument is that police can maintain trust with local communities, including immigrant communities, while still cooperating with ICE on serious criminal cases. It doesn't have to be an either-or situation.
Finding balance there. Oh.
Fourth, fiscal responsibility. States need to recognize, according to this view, the unsustainable costs of policies that are seen as incentivizing what the sources call illegal immigration. Acknowledge the financial reality.
Got it. And the last one.
Finally, just upholding the rule of law. This applies to everyone, federal, state, local officials. Commit to enforcing laws as written, not picking and choosing based on, political wins.
Okay, so those are the proposed principles for cooperation. Let's try to wrap this up for our listeners. What's the bottom line here?
Well, looking back at everything we've discussed, the source material really presents the federal actions in LA, the deployment, the lawsuit, as a kind of necessary step,
Necessary? Why?
as a necessary reassertion of constitutional order and the rule of law. That's the framing. The conclusion drawn in the article we looked at is pretty stark. California officials might disagree with federal policies, but they simply lack the authority to obstruct their enforcement.
So disagreement is one thing, obstruction is another, constitutionally speaking.
That's the core argument presented.
Okay.
And it goes further, arguing that ultimately these sanctuary policies end up harming the very people they claim to protect
How so?
by undermining public safety, imposing fiscal burdens on taxpayers, and creating conditions for civil unrest. That's the source's final assessment of the impact.
Okay. So this deep dive has taken us through the constitutional clashes, the safety debates, the huge financial numbers, the political strategies, all playing out right now between California and the federal government over immigration. We've seen these core principles, national sovereignty, public safety, fiscal health, really pushed to the forefront.
It's incredibly complex with deeply held beliefs on all sides.
Definitely. So here's something for you, our listener, to think about as we close. Considering everything we've unpacked today, the arguments, the costs, the tensions, what does this ongoing confrontation in California really signal about the future balance of power in our federal system? How might these deep divisions over immigration law and state versus federal authority ultimately be resolved? Or is it possible they might just deepen even further in the years ahead?
A lot to consider there.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.